So what are smoothing groups, and why does your model look smooth and sometimes not look smooth? I think I may have covered this, having sort of random conversations here and there with some people. But let's really take a look at what is going on and why things are doing what they're doing. Um, so right now, I forget how many segments are normally in a sphere. It's something like probably higher than that, 36 or something. There you go. That's probably what it looks like. And the box usually looks like that. So I have this general question I ask people all the time. What is the difference between the two? Um, the box and the sphere. So why are they different? Why do they look different? And of course, the comment is as well, the box has corners, and I disagree. The sphere has corners as well. And people look at me really oddly. Or they say the sphere is smooth and the box isn't. And I say, well, no, it's not. Well, not really. Technically, it's not. It looks smooth, I guess you could say. So what is the actual difference between these? So one of the things, the other comment I get is, well, the sphere has a lot more polygons in it. Okay, sure. Let's make it have less polygons in it. So why doesn't it look the same? Why does it look the way that it looks right now? It doesn't look like the box, and it actually has less triangles. Okay, it's got 8 triangles, where the box has more. Okay, it's got 12 triangles in it. So they aren't. There's something else going on here that makes them look the way they do. Okay, so here's something we're going to take a look at, and that what normals actually are and what they do. Now, you guys are embarking on normal maps at this point in time, and you need to really start to understand what a normal map is, because it isn't some voodoo magic. Well, I guess it is to some degree, because it's a bunch of mathematics, but let's actually figure out what's going on. So what's the difference between our box and our sphere? Let's go and do another test real quick. I'm going to add a smooth modifier to the box, and I want to give it a smoothing group of 1. Oh, and guess what? It now looks more like the sphere in here anyways. Nice soft edges. Let's go and put a smooth modifier on the sphere, and now it looks more like the box and has corners. So we can make and switch them back and forth, but what's actually being changed? What's actually happening? So I'm going to add a modifier called edit normals, okay, and an edit normal modifier, and I'll drop it on the box. So here's what's going on. In the box, we have triangles. So if we look at any one of these, given these faces here, and this polygon that we call it, is actually 2 triangles. One where the other, there is an edge that cuts across this. Okay, let me just switch over to a drawing tool here so I can draw some of my thoughts as we go and try and get some of these. So somewhere in here, there's a hidden triangle. We could go find it if we wanted. So this triangle here, okay, has 3 vertices, 1, 2, 3. Okay, they're numbered, whatever numbers they are in the overall box, and it has 3 normals, and you can see the normals drawn right here, 1, 2, and 3. And each one of those normals is perpendicular to this triangular face right now. So they're sticking straight out of that triangle, okay? And in sticking straight out of their triangle, what's happening is it's determining how the light is going to bounce off of that surface. So let's just look at the top as we do this, and I'll bounce some light off and some real ugly looking drawings. So we have that triangle again. Okay, comes across like that. Let's say we've got our 3 normals for those 3 vertices of this back triangle back here. Okay, and we've got light that comes in, and it gets projected in like this, and it travels down, hits the surface somewhere on a point, and then the light bounces off as we'd expect it to bounce. Okay, now what's the angle that it's actually bouncing at? Well, you'd say, well, it's a flat surface. Well, is it? Because in 3D, we can determine it to be whatever we want. So what that point actually is right there is an average of the 3 surface normals. So right now, they're all pointing in the same direction. That would say that that normal right there, okay, or virtual normal, we'll kind of call it right now, the averaged normal is pointing in the same direction as all three of those because they're all pointing in the same direction, okay? Now what happens is the light comes in and bounces off at any point in the box, and it's going to bounce exactly the same way because all the normals on this polygon now, these two triangles, are all pointing straight up. But when it gets to the edge here and it starts bouncing over this edge and the light comes in and hits the edge on the front edge, it's going to bounce based on the average of these normals now. And it's going to pick those normals up because we're hitting this triangle, let's say. And so it's going to bounce off on that one. And what that's doing is it's giving us what looks like a hard edge. So if it bounces just one side of the edge or the other, then the light bounces in different directions and we get what looks like a hard edge going on. So if we want to actually take this and smooth it out and get rid of those edges, I'm just going to select those three surface normals right now and hit unify. And notice how all of a sudden we have one normal now, or it looks like one normal, because there's actually three vertex normals right here. One for this triangle, one for that one for this one. And, could be actually, right? So they're all coming together there. So now what we're seeing now is that that's all split up in all combined together and not split up. And so we start getting this rounding effect of the light at that corner, right at the very corner. It starts looking smooth. I'm going to unify this one now. And that edge starts to vanish because now it's actually blending across this surface and it's taking the averages of, if it hits this triangle here, it's taking the average of that normal, this one, and that one, and coming up with the direction the light bounces. So if we have our triangle again, that's right here, and we have light that comes in and hits this surface now from whatever direction it's going to be coming in at, it's going to figure out the normal by an average of this one, and this one weighted to where it is. So if it hit right in the middle, it would be the direct average. If it hits closer to this one, it's going to take on the effect of this one. So it's going to be weighted more to this corner's normal, okay, than this corner's normal. And what we're going to have is we're going to have a light bouncing at different angles depending on what its its weighted normal is anywhere on that triangle, giving us this smooth looking effect that's going on here. So if I pick all of these and go ahead and unify, we're back to when we smoothed it with the smooth modifier. So the smooth modifier is actually just controlling normals like this. It just does it in a little bit more user-friendly manner. So get out of the sub object there. I'm just going to go in and wasn't getting at it for some reason. There we go. And I'm going to throw it on here. So actually I can just go and grab this and just throw it onto this one. And oh, it's totally messed up because I shouldn't do that with that modifier, obviously. Never seen that. So we'll get a chia pet or what's the Hellraiser look sort of going on here. And if we grab all these and we break them, we get back to that idea that now we're seeing all those sort of planes as opposed to a smooth surface. So it's kind of cool what you can do. Now you can even take, let's say, a plane in this case. And if I go in and throw the edit normals modifier on there again, what's really cool is I can make it look like there's an actual curve in the surface. So I'm going to take, let's say, let's make it look like there's actually a bump in the surface here. So I'm going to take all these and I'm going to lean them this way. And I'm going to lean these ones even more. And I'm going to take these, I want to lean them this way. And I want to take these and I want to lean them even more. So what's interesting now is you're going to see light, it looking like that surface is actually got a curve. I'll just convert it down to an editable poly. So you can actually see what it looks like. It's got a curve to it. Now let's try an actual light in here and drop in a light and see what kind of effect that has. So I'm going to give it an Arnold light, and I'll just give it a quad light. And I'll make sure that I'm in the realistic mode, stick the point in the middle, and turn the light up and over the top. I don't know why it's not very bright. Give me 1 second. There, I crank the settings up. So watch what happens when I rotate it over that plane. Okay, and you're saying, well, okay, but how is that different than if it was just a normal plane? Let's take a look at a normal plane without the normals being messed with. Okay, and I'll just put this in between the two of them, and I'll just change the rectangular area that we have here so it covers both these lights easily. Another nice little trick: you want to spin a spinner faster, hold down Control. Want to slow down the spinner spinning, hold down Alt. So now as I go over it, you're going to see that the one plane looks totally flat where the other one looks completely curved. And it's because we're cheating the normals. We're cheating the direction that the triangles are pointing in. So what is a normal map? Well, a normal map is a map that cheats the normals even further. So let me go and apply a normal map onto here. Give me a second. Well, I just did something really silly and finished the tutorial and forgot that I'd paused the recording. So let's do this again. Hopefully it sounds as good as it did the first time. So now I've applied a material onto this object. You see it looks like it's bumpy. Now here's the material I've applied. It's super simple. It's just simply this dirt map sort of texture I've got and this normal map. And so I'm just going to unplug the normal and just go back, hit M, and guess what? Whoosh, all of that detail that was there just vanished. So I'm just going to put it off to one side here and plug it into the bump map and watch the difference that happens. Okay. So what on earth is a normal map, and how on earth does it do that? Okay, so that's the tricky part. So edit normals modifier again so we can talk about it. This is the direction all of the natural normals are going. So this is the geometry's normals. They're all pointing straight up. So what on earth does a normal map do? There are these crazy pretty colors, okay? So here's what they do. We use the RGB channels to be able to calculate a deviation in the angle of the normal. What the hell, Paul, are you going on about? Okay, so let's go in and draw some little stuff again. We've got our triangle. Okay, so this is one of our triangles. It has the three normals. Okay, we're just going to refer to those sort of as natural normals of the polygon, or of the triangle now, of the face. Okay, so those are its normals. In this case, they're all pointing in the same direction. So if I were to hit a point with a light somewhere in the middle here, it would bounce off at the angle that is the average of these three normals. Perfect. That's how we discussed before. But now with a normal map, what happens is the light comes in, hits the surface, comes up with the average of the three natural normals, which in our case is going to be pointing straight up again here. But then it also picks up next the color of the normal map. So if the normal map is blue, or let's say, sake of argument, there is no normal map. So if the normal map looks like this, we're just going to say everything's blue. So everything's this blue tone. Blue basically says, don't do anything. There's no change in angle of the surface at this pixel, okay? So with it on though, what's happening is the light's coming in. If it sees red, it's going to angle it in one direction, red or negative red, and it's going to deviate the angle of the surface right there at that pixel by a certain amount. So basically that red, positive red and negative red, yes, you can even calculate negative values in a texture map, okay, is going to be able to sort of add on to whatever the normal is. So we take the normal that we've got and we add that red value to it. But we've also got green, and green then goes the other way. So it's going side to side, red's going front to back on it. And essentially, it's then calculating a change in angle at that pixel that's being added on to the natural normals that we've got. And you've got what looks like this, complex surface happening here, and it looks just super uber cool, right? And what's cool is it even is taking into account the fact that we've changed the natural normals on this plane back here when we were doing it. Okay, so we set that up so it looked like it was curved, and indeed the same thing is happening there. It's looking like it's curved still. because the normal map is simply adding on to whatever those natural normals are. And in this case, those natural normals had all been deviated and make it look like it was curved. I'm going to delete the light, pop over to this sphere again. I've collapsed it down to NL poly. Now let's talk about smoothing groups a little bit. So we stick the smooth modifier on there. It starts looking all boxy. Okay. And what's happening here is it just basically removed all smoothing groups. So it split apart all of those normals. Okay, so they're all broken, pointing in their different directions, and it looks like the box did when we started out, because the box should look like that. If we hit a smoothing group 1, we just set all of the smoothing groups on every triangle to be a value of 1. And what that does is just becomes an easy way of sort of setting an ID. And what that did was it just unified all of those normals between them all. If two adjacent faces have the same smoothing group ID, their normals point in the same direction at that vertex at the corner of the triangles, and it looks like it's all smooth. Now you could also go with an auto smooth feature and dial up and down an angle, and you'll notice it, there's a threshold here. So if it's above that threshold, it'll smooth it out. So these faces here are above the threshold of 20 degrees or whatever, 19.4, they smooth together. These ones here must be slightly above that, and it requires a little bit more of a threshold. So sometimes you can get away with smoothing your model just by playing around with the smooth modifier. Now what we might want to do is go a little bit further and control it completely where we want. So into the polygon mode, and so we can select polygons. And again, we're selecting two triangles in this case. Down in properties, I'm going to open up smoothing groups. Your properties will be over here somewhere. I like my ribbon going this way. I guess really for tutorials, I should put it across the top, but I don't. So you can do an auto smooth and smooth them all to an angle, just the same as you could in here. And you've got all these IDs. So if you look at the ID changes, I click on it, this ID is actually updating. They're all set to an ID of 1. So I'm going to take this one here, I'm going to turn off 1, and I'm going to turn on 2. And lo and behold, guess what? We've got a flat spot in our sphere. We didn't change the geometry, we changed how the light is bouncing off the sphere. Of course, there are lots of flat spots on the sphere. You can see them around the outside edges, but now it looks like it is. I want to pick the adjacent poly right beside, so two other triangles. I'm going to turn off 1, I want to turn on 2. And guess what? All of the 1s blend together because they all get along in a group, and all the 2s get along, but the 1s and 2s just don't play nicely together in the schoolyard. So they're not blending together. But there's always that one kid that's kind of the go-between, can jump between all the groups, right? So I want to pick that kid over here. I'm going to leave 1 on, so he's friends with 1 and he's friends with 2. So isn't this ridiculous the way I'm explaining this? So if you look at this now, this one here is now blending with all the 1s, but it's also blending with the 2 that's below it. Okay, so you can see it's actually blending it down into it. I'm going to go and throw in an edit normals modifier, so we can see what happens, and you can see that all of these others, all these 1s are all blending together. They're all unified. You can see they're all unified at it. But where there's a 2 and a 1, you can see they're split apart, okay? And they're split apart, and those are split apart. But where there's a 2 and a 2, you can see it's unified them again now. So it's merely a way of applying an ID to say, hey, I want you to be your own smoothing group, or hey, I want you to be the same smoothing group as the ones that are beside you, so you'll blend together. And then, of course, if you apply a normal map onto this and assign that normal map, it's all deviating off of those normals that we have there. So it's actually trying to take those into account. And if you can see, we can actually still see a hard line because the natural normals are producing that hard line, and then the normal map is deviating from it. So you're going to have to pay attention to your smoothing groups and learn how to utilize your smoothing groups when you're creating those normal maps, because normal maps are getting projected on from high res to low res in some cases, or in the cases like this, I literally have a tool that converts this into a normal map by making a best guess based on the darks and lights from one to the other. So there are multiple ways of making them. projected normals, a high res model to a low res model is probably the most accurate, but not necessarily always the most efficient in production. Sometimes just using tools like that I use here to make them done dirty and fast work perfectly well and get us really good looking results. There you have it.